Okay, you ever get that feeling like you're trying to break a bad habit, want to change things up, but it's almost like your brain it has a mind of its own.
Yeah.
Well, this article, Rewiring the Brain for Health and Happiness, it dives right into that.
It does. It really shows you how much control we can actually have over our own brains.
Right. Like I was expecting a few new tips, maybe? But this whole concept, neuroplasticity, that really got me thinking.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing stuff.
Yeah.
The idea that our brains aren't just static. They change. They adapt based on what we experience.
So instead of being stuck with, like, this pre-programmed brain, we can actually choose which neural pathways get developed.
Exactly.
Almost like, I don't know, strengthening a mental muscle.
Exactly.
Mm.
And the article really digs into this whole self-directed neuroplasticity thing.
Okay, so break that down for me. What exactly does that even mean?
So it's basically the ability to intentionally guide how our brains rewire themselves by focusing on good things, right? Positive thoughts, positive actions, those experiences. We're kind of encouraging our brains to build new pathways, healthier ones.
So the more we use those pathways, the stronger they get. And the old ones, the negative ones, they start to fade out.
Exactly. Like you're creating a mental superhighway. Straight to happiness.
I like that. A happiness highway.
It's about consciously creating new habits, new thought patterns, things that actually support, your well-being.
Okay, less theory, more practice. Let's dive into the concrete stuff. What can we actually do to rewire for happiness? The article mentioned gratitude practices. What's the deal with those?
Gratitude practices are great because they show how simple actions, even small ones, they impact our neural pathways.
Give me an example. What kind of things are we talking about here?
Even keeping a gratitude journal, it can be really powerful. The article suggested just jotting down like 3 things every day, things you're grateful for.
Like even small stuff. A good cup of coffee, a sunny morning, that kind of thing.
Exactly. Doesn't have to be profound or anything. The key is shifting that focus to the positive stuff, the good stuff in your life.
Training your brain to scan for the good, even with all the, the daily chaos.
Precisely. And by activating those pathways, the ones linked to gratitude, you're strengthening your capacity for happiness.
Yeah.
You're building it up.
Okay, that's cool. But what about those times when, your mind's racing? A million thoughts. The article mentioned mindfulness and meditation, right?
Yeah. Mindfulness is all about being present right now without judging yourself. And meditation, it's like a workout for that mental muscle.
Like hitting the reset button on your brain.
Exactly. Instead of getting swept up in worries, regrets, all that, you're grounding yourself in the now.
The article said even a few minutes of meditation each day can make a difference, right?
Oh, absolutely. Even short bursts, just a few minutes of mindfulness, it helps calm that mental chatter, creates peace.
Are there any specific techniques they recommend for those of us who, are new to this whole meditation thing?
They talked about focusing on your breath. It's simple, but...
I've heard that before, but it seems so simple yet so hard at the same time.
Right.
How can just breathing, how can that quiet the mind?
It's about training your attention, building awareness of your thoughts, but not getting carried away by them. Your breath, it becomes an anchor, something to come back to when your mind wanders, which it will.
Okay, so it's like giving your brain a break from all the noise.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And over time, if you're consistent, you actually strengthen those neural circuits, the ones for focus, for attention.
Makes sense. But let's be real, sometimes we need more than deep breaths to shift our mood. What about music? Can jamming out to our favorite tunes actually rewire our brains for happiness?
Absolutely. Music has a huge impact on our brains. More and more evidence shows it can be a really valuable tool for better mental health.
Okay, now this is where it gets really interesting. Tell me more about this music and brain connection.
So when we listen to music, especially calming music, it can lower cortisol levels.
Cortisol, that's
The stress hormone, yeah.
so like giving our brains a soothing bath.
In a way, yeah. The article talked about making a playlist, your favorite calming songs, and then, working it into your daily routine.
Okay.
Whether you're working, cooking, just relaxing, music can be a powerful ally in rewiring for happiness.
We've got gratitude, we've got mindfulness, we've got music, all amazing tools for cultivating positivity. But what about that little voice? The one that loves to focus on the negative, the "you're not good enough, that'll never work" voice. Any tips for that negativity bias?
Negativity bias, it's tricky. Unfortunately, our brains, they're naturally wired to latch onto negative experiences.
Oh, come on.
It's an evolutionary thing. Back when our ancestors, they had to be hyper aware of danger, for survival.
So our brains are hardwired to be pessimists. That's kind of a bummer.
The good news is we can rewire that negativity bias
Yeah.
through conscious effort, through practice.
Rewire our brains to be more optimistic. How do we even start?
One way is to actively challenge those negative thoughts. When you catch yourself thinking something negative, just stop. Ask yourself, is this even true?
Okay.
A lot of the time, those thoughts, they're based on fear, on insecurity, not reality.
So fact-checking our own brains. I like it.
Exactly. Another powerful tool, making a conscious effort to focus on the positive. We tend to dwell on the negative, but savoring positive moments, that can shift the balance.
Creating a more balanced, a more positive inner landscape. Weeding out the negative, planting seeds of positivity, that kind of thing.
Exactly. The more you cultivate those positive pathways, the more resilient you become.
This is great stuff. But let's be honest, breaking bad habits, forming new ones, it's tough. We all know that feeling. Wanting to change, but falling back into old patterns. What does the article say about that?
It all comes down to understanding the habit loop. It's a cue, a routine, and a reward.
Okay, break that down for me. What is the habit loop and how do we use it?
Sure. Let's use hitting the snooze button as an example. A classic bad habit, right?
Oh.
The cue is your alarm going off. The routine is you hitting snooze. And the reward, a few more minutes of sleep.
Guilty as charged on that one. So how do we use this habit loop to actually break the cycle?
You identify the cue, you change the routine, but you keep the reward. So instead of hitting snooze, maybe put your alarm across the room, forces you to get out of bed.
Okay.
The reward's still more sleep, but you've broken the negative routine.
I like that. Forces you to interrupt that automatic response.
Exactly. And by consciously changing that routine, you weaken the pathway for the old habit and strengthen the pathway for the new one.
So we're rewiring our brains one small habit at a time.
Exactly. And the more we understand these mechanisms, the more empowered we become to create real change, lasting positive change.
This has been really insightful. We've covered so much already, from the science behind it all to actual tips for rewiring for happiness.
We've just scratched the surface.
There's so much more to explore. We'll be right back to delve even deeper into this fascinating topic of rewiring our brains for happiness. Stay tuned. And we're back, still diving deep into rewiring our brains for happiness. Before the break, we talked about, gratitude, mindfulness, music, even tackling those negative thought spirals. But this article, it goes beyond just individual actions. It talks about how crucial our social connections are for a happy brain. And that's something I really want to unpack today.
Yeah, it's a big one. And it makes sense, right? Our brains, we didn't evolve in isolation. We're wired for connection.
Right.
In fact, studies show people with strong social ties, they tend to be happier, healthier, all around.
Okay, so hanging out with friends isn't just fun. It's like brain food. I knew there was a reason I loved game night. But seriously, what's the science behind that?
Well, think about it. Social connections, they give us huge emotional support. When life gets tough, having people there for you to lean on, friends, family, it makes a world of difference.
It does.
Sharing what we're going through, good or bad, it helps us process those emotions, get perspective, build resilience.
Like that saying, shared joy is doubled, shared sorrow is halved. But it's more than just feeling supported, right? The article talked about actual changes happening in our brains.
Absolutely. Social interaction, it directly affects our brain chemistry. Positive interactions like a hug from someone you care about, a good laugh with friends, it triggers the release of hormones, like oxytocin, for example.
Oxytocin, that's the love hormone, right?
Exactly. And it does more than just, give you the warm fuzzies. Oxytocin, it promotes trust, bonding, connection, all essential for well-being. And here's a bonus. Those positive interactions, they also lower cortisol, the stress hormone we were talking about before.
Less stress, more love. I knew those game nights were a good idea, but realistically, we can't always be surrounded by people. Anything we can do solo to nurture those connections, still get those brain benefits.
Oh, definitely. Even just expressing gratitude to the people we care about, it goes a long way. A sincere thank you, a genuine compliment, it strengthens those bonds, boosts your mood, their mood.
Like they say, a little appreciation goes a long way. So it sounds like rewiring for happiness, it's a mix of inner work and outer connection.
Precisely. Building that positive environment inside yourself and nurturing those meaningful relationships with others, both are key for a happy, healthy brain.
This deep dive, it's really making me rethink how connected everything is. We've covered gratitude, mindfulness, music, the power of these social connections. Before we wrap up, there's one more piece I'm curious about. Turning this knowledge into lasting change. Because knowing is one thing, but building those positive habits, that's a whole different ballgame.
You got it. It's like the difference between, I don't know, reading a recipe for cake and actually baking it.
Right.
Positive habits, they're essential. They make those changes stick long term.
So how do we bridge that gap? How do we go from like wishing for change to actually making it happen, making those positive changes part of our lives?
The key is understanding that habit loop. We touched on it earlier. The cue, the routine, and the reward. Remember the snooze button example?
I do, but maybe this time we can use a different example, something a little healthier to get us inspired.
Of course.
Yeah.
Okay, let's say your goal is to start running in the morning. Make it a habit. Your cue could be setting out your running clothes the night before, right where you see them. That visual reminder, that's your cue. The routine is actually putting on those clothes, going for the run. And the reward, that feeling of accomplishment, those endorphins, maybe even a delicious, healthy breakfast after.
I get it. The cue is the little nudge, the routine is the action, and the reward is what makes you want to keep doing it. But how do we use this to break bad habits, the ones that feel like super ingrained?
Same principle, but in reverse. Let's say you're trying to stop mindlessly scrolling through social media before bed.
Oh, tough one. Definitely guilty of that.
We all do it. The trick is identify that cue. What usually triggers the scrolling?
For me, it's as soon as I'm in bed, phone's in my hand.
There's your cue. So think about a different routine. Instead of reaching for your phone when you get in bed, what if you tried reading a book, listening to some calming music?
Okay, yeah. Redirect that autopilot. But what about when willpower just isn't enough? How do we stay motivated, make those new routines really stick?
Consistency, that's huge. The more you repeat that new behavior, the stronger those pathways become. It's like wearing a path in the grass. The more you walk it, the clearer it gets. Also, celebrate those small victories along the way.
No more beating ourselves up for, slipping up.
Right. It's about progress, not perfection. You're literally rewiring your brain. It takes time. It takes effort.
It's a journey, not a destination. Love that. But speaking of the journey, we are actually coming to the end of our show today.
It does feel like we just scratched the surface. There's always more to explore.
There is. But don't worry, we will be back next week to dive even deeper into this fascinating topic. For now, we'll leave you with a few final thoughts. So we've been on this deep dive, right? Rewiring our brains for happiness. Gratitude, social connections, the whole deal. And it's honestly pretty amazing realizing we have this much control. But it also makes me wonder, are there specific exercises, things we can do to speed up this whole rewiring process? Is there a brain gym membership I've been missing out on?
You don't need a membership.
Yeah.
But thinking of it like a workout for your brain, not a bad idea. The article actually mentioned some brain training exercises. They can help strengthen your cognitive functions, boost overall brain health.
Okay, now you've got to tell me more. What kind of exercises are we talking about?
It's simpler than you might think. Engaging in activities that challenge your memory, your cognitive flexibility, that's key. Things like Sudoku, crossword puzzles, even just trying to remember your grocery list without writing it down.
So flexing those mental muscles, keeping our brains nimble and adaptable.
Exactly. Just like with physical exercise, variety is key. Mix things up, challenge yourself, try new things.
I like that. What about those brain training apps? I've heard about Lumosity, Brain HQ, those kinds of things. Do those actually work?
They can be really helpful tools. It's like a gamified way to train your brain. And the exercises, they're designed by neuroscientists to target specific skills like memory, attention, processing speed.
So it's like a personal trainer for your brain, all from an app.
Pretty much. And the great thing is you can do it anywhere, anytime. No fancy equipment needed. Just work those brain-boosting activities into your day.
This has been amazing. Eye-opening, really. It seems like the more we learn about the brain, the more incredible it becomes. And the biggest takeaway for me, it's this sense of hope, this idea that we're not stuck. We're not stuck with some fixed level of happiness. We can change our brains, create better lives.
That's the power of neuroplasticity right there.
Yeah.
Hope and possibility. Change is always possible, no matter who you are, what your situation is.
Absolutely. It's a journey, not a destination. There's no quick fix, no magic pill, but it's worth the effort, don't you think?
Completely agree. Every step towards happiness, towards well-being, no matter how small, it's a win. Celebrate it.
I love that. This deep dive, it's given us a lot to think about. We explored neuroplasticity, how to rewire for happiness, everything from gratitude to the importance of those social connections. We covered a lot of ground.
We did. We saw how important it is to challenge those negative thoughts, to be
Yeah.
mindful, to give our brains those workouts they need.
And the best part is, this is just the beginning. There's always more to discover, more to learn. But for now, we want to leave you with one final thought. The article, it focused on what we can do as individuals, which is great. But it got me thinking, what about our communities? What role do they play? Could surrounding ourselves with good influences, with positivity, could that actually make these changes even stronger? Could it speed up this rewiring process? Is happiness something we can actually cultivate together?
That is a fascinating question. It speaks to how interconnected we all are. Maybe those individual transformations, they ripple outwards and create this wave of positive change.
Wouldn't that be amazing? The idea that by working on our own happiness, we could be making the world a little bit brighter too. Something to think about. And on that note, we'll wrap up this deep dive into rewiring our brains for happiness. Thanks for joining us on this journey.